It is true. I should be reading the newspaper more often. Not just to get my news fix, but to get straight up information in general. Look, I could get a vacation much cheaper than I originally expected now. What is up, everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for The Post. Set in the early 1970s, the plot basically follows the true story of how journalists from the Washington Post attempted to publish the Pentagon Papers, which contained undisclosed information about the US government's involvement in the Vietnam War. Going into this movie, I had middling to moderate expectations, despite the fact that this movie is directed by the one and only Steven Spielberg. He is one of my absolute favorite film directors of all time. I'm sure that applies to many other people as well. He can go from directing such big spectacle wonders such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. the Extraterrestrial, to even smaller, more political affair like Lincoln. And even though The Post is directed by Steven Spielberg, once again, I wasn't really that interested in seeing this film, even though I am a history buff who should be delving into more of these kind of movies that deal with real life topics. This movie was also rushed into production as Steven Spielberg's next film, Ready Player One, was already completed and will be released this upcoming spring. I am so excited for that film, yet Spielberg wanted to make The Post as he did feel that it was a timely story, so now here we are. Starting out with the cast and their performances, this movie is led by two of the heaviest hitting actors working in Hollywood today, Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, which I will admit that did add somewhat to my interest in seeing the film as they are working with Steven Spielberg in a movie. With Meryl Streep, she plays Katharine Graham, the leader of the Washington Post, and this business has been passed down by her family. First it was led by her father, then her husband, and now Katharine Graham herself. And she gives an A-game-worthy performance in this film. She is very subtle in how she delivers a lot of her lines and her emotional demeanor, and this is why many people consider her to be one of, if not the greatest film actress of all time. She's personally not my favorite, yet I can so see the amount of pedigree that she has while delivering a great performance like this one. Tom Hanks likewise is also great as Ben Bradley, the executive editor of the Washington Post, and he gives the more showy performance between him and Streep. And he is superb in the film, giving a lot of direct emotion in what he wants to do in finding those Pentagon Papers and publishing them. Helping out Streep and Hanks with their fantastic performances are a slew of other worthy mentions in this ensemble cast. This is a big ensemble cast, and leave it to Spielberg to assemble a bunch of great supporting actors, such as Sarah Paulson, Bob Odenkirk, who I love as Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, Tracy Letts, Bradley Whitford, Bruce Greenwood, Matthew Rhys, Alison Brie, Carrie Coon, Jesse Plemons, David Cross. A lot of people are in this film, and they all give really strong performances as well. The writing in this film definitely sets up its historical and political context from the get-go for director Steven Spielberg to flex his film expression muscles to bring this story onto the big screen. I would liken this movie to Spielberg's own Lincoln, where both movies begin with a bit of an action sequence and then go on to be mostly dialogue-driven experiences. Within the first portions of the movie, I was enjoying what I was seeing, yet the movie does give quite a bit of exposition throughout the first half or so of the film to get us to know what is going on historically with what the Washington Post was going to do in publishing the Pentagon Papers, and then get us to care about the characters and see something in history be played out. For some, it will either be boring or confusing to them to have a lot of information be put on them in such a specific period of time. It also applies if you're not as historically inclined like me to be able to get sucked into the story. As for my take, like I've said, I was into the film for its first half in seeing what was coming together in this story, yet when the second half of this movie does hit, It shows off the greatness that director Steven Spielberg does have with how he is able to focus a lot of the attention on the actors bouncing off of each other, the quick-witted dialogue, and a lot of serious drama. Spielberg's direction from scene to scene had me more engaged with each subsequent scene in the second half than the last, and this goes into, again, a lot of the historical prowess that I was into in seeing this film. A lot of technical merits of this movie have to be mentioned too, with the way the movie looks in it appearing to be authentic to the early 1970s, with the costumes, the locations, objects, other things that are shown in the film. John Williams does compose the score for this film, and he is a frequent collaborator with Steven Spielberg, and the ambient, atmospheric-like music that he does put into the film does add to a lot of the gravitas that the acting showed off, but also with its storytelling. All the while, I thought this movie was well-paced at a little under 2 hours. Like I've said, that first half isn't as engaging as the second half, in my opinion, yet I do think it is still good enough to push on and see what does go down by the end of this film, as this movie is very much reminiscent of All the President's Men, which dealt with a similar subject matter. In fact, without giving away spoilers, the way the post does end, it could easily have you segue into watching All the President's Men and having it be a nice companion piece to get a large history lesson done while watching these films. All in all, Steven Spielberg's latest may not be his greatest. I mean, come on, Steven Spielberg has had so many great movies in the past that it's difficult to even put a top 10 list of his best films. But what Spielberg does with The Post in rushing this film into production, it makes me see why he did so in presenting a culturally relevant and timely tale where, in the advent of us living in the political climate and atmosphere that we are living in now, with fake news and a bunch of other various debates of how media should be handled, The Post sheds light on how a previous decade with the 1970s experienced similar circumstances and how a bunch of people wanted to make a specific change. Couple all that with the magic that Spielberg brings when his direction kicks into high gear, the acting, the writing, the rest of the look and feel of this film, and you have a movie that I really enjoyed. This movie will be too slow or not interesting enough for some, but for those open to watching this historical event be shown on the big screen, and also if you want to see what Spielberg does do with another true story, this is a movie I definitely recommend. Expect to see this film get quite a few Oscar nominations, and by the way, speaking of that, the Oscar nominations will be announced this Tuesday, so be on the lookout for my video where I react live to the Oscar nominations as they are being announced. My final verdict for The Post is 4 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of The Post. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.